Hey, horror fans, welcome back to Jay vs. Horror and another episode of Hardcore Horror Reviews. Today we're going to be talking about 2007's Frontiers. It's a French horror film written and directed by Xavier Gens. It stars Estelle Lefebvre, Samuel Le Bihan, and Arlene Wick. Sure, I didn't pronounce any of those right, except for maybe the Xavier part. And I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right. It's probably Xavier without Xavier. It follows a group of young criminals from Paris who lodge at a countryside inn run by, of course, neo Nazis, in the aftermath of riots spurred by a controversial presidential election. Sound familiar? Uh, well, kind of. After its premiere in France at the Agadi Film Festival in 2007, the film was given a limited release and hit with the NC-17 rating in the United States. So it wasn't seen that much in the U.S. or North America, except for as part of the After Dark Horror Fest, which did hit DVD. So let's take a look at the plot. We have a far right candidate who is elected to the French presidency, sparking riots in Paris. Hoping to escape Paris but needing cash, a street gang made up of Muslim Arab youths, Alex, Tom, Farid, the pregnant girl Yasmin, and her brother Sam, take advantage of the chaos to pull off a robbery. And during this robbery, Sam is shot, and the group splits up. Alex and Yasmin take Sam to a hospital, and Tom and Farid take the money to a family-run inn near the border. It's not their family, by the way. The innkeepers there are named Gilberte and Claudia, and they claim that the rooms are free, and they start trying to seduce these two young guys, which doesn't go for very long because they get pretty gross kind of quick, and it's kind of a major turnoff for the guys. But meanwhile, at the hospital, the emergency room staff report Sam's injury to the police because all gunshot injuries are reported to the police. I guess even in France. Sam insists Yasmin run before the police catch her. His dying wish is that Yasmin not have an abortion because there's a conversation she has earlier with Alex, who I guess is the father, where she talks about, I'm just going to have an abortion. You can't, and then there's a little monologue at the beginning of the film where she talks about she shouldn't be forced to bring her child into a world full of racism and hate and all this other stuff. So his dying wish is, please don't have the abortion. This is going to be my, nephew or niece, so don't do that. And Alex and Yasmin, then they have to go. They have to get the hell out of there before the cops show up. So they leave Sam behind, and of course he's fatally injured. We know we're not going to see Sam again. Alex and Yasmin phone the friends, Tom and them, to ask for directions, and Tom and Farid give them directions. But soon after this, they have a confrontation with one of the guys that is at the hostel here, or whatever you want to call it, inn. And he's like, you called my sister a whore and this and that, and they have a big, confrontation with him, and then he pulls a gun on him, and shit just goes from bad to worse. This is our first inkling of what's actually going on here. There's a big guy named Guts. There's several men in this. There's like 5 guys, and 3 of them are huge. And but one of them's named, the first one, the big one that we meet, is Guts, and he takes off. They get away from these guys. Tom gets shot. His hand is blown off. Pretty cool scene here. And Farid, one of my favorite characters in the film, he tries to fight back, and he helps Tom get away. They get in the car and take off, but they get run off the road into a damn ravine that, it actually looked like a real car crash when it happened. I mean, I'm sure it was a real car crash. But it seemed like something that was bad enough to really hurt somebody, but at the same time, they could probably live through it. Which I kind of like. I hate it when the car falls off like 50 foot and explodes, or if it falls off 400 foot and then somebody gets out and walks away. That's also kind of dumb. But yeah. So Guts runs their car off the cliff into the ravine, but they both are able to survive. They get out and they wander into a mine shaft. This is another interesting subplot to the movie here with this mine shaft. And Tom is quickly recaptured in the mine shaft. I wouldn't say quickly. They're crawling through this. It's like just a very narrow hole, but it's basically what it is it's a garbage disposal. And they climb up it, and when they enter this room, and we meet our next big, huge Nazi, who's like, 500 pounds or something, and he splits Tom's head open as soon as he sticks his head out. And it's a pretty good scene. And then, Fareed tries to get away again. And like I said, he's one of my favorite characters. He goes through one of the most amounts of shit here. I will say that Yasmin probably goes through the most, but he goes through a lot. And, but then we see that, that unaware of the danger. Well, first we see that, we got Fareed's trying to get away from him. He's fending for himself in these mines. And he runs into the family's like rejected children, which is not totally explained, but it's still interesting. And unaware of the danger, Alex and Yasmin arrive at the end. And this scene doesn't last very long. I think Alex wanders off a little bit, and when he does, he finds Tom, who is hanging upside down with his head split open at this point, and he tries to help him get free. But this is another pretty brutal scene here where he's just not able. He's hung by these metal hooks to his feet, and he's not able to get him free. So lots of good gore in this movie, guys. I mean, of course, it's on the hardcore horror review, but that doesn't always mean that it's a gore film. I know it should, probably. But sometimes for me, like, the psychological films can be hardcore horror films. Like the one that we just talked about the other day, Children of Sorrow. It's not super gory. It's a little gory. It has its moments, but it's mostly like a psychological movie that just fucks with your head. But yeah, so now Alex and Yasmin, they have, Alex comes back, we gotta get the hell out of here. They killed Tom. Yasmin doesn't listen to him at first, but I guess it's aggravating because this could have prevented a lot of what happens after this. But she refuses to listen. She's just like standing there like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And I guess there is some pretext for this because earlier she doesn't, you get the feeling she doesn't trust Alex. She doesn't trust his actions, his instincts, or anything like that. She thinks he's a fuck up. And she also thinks he doesn't care about her. So maybe that lends a little bit of to why she questions him so much here. But it's too much for too long. And, then they're captured. They're captured by this psycho family, and they're put into a pig pen that's just disgusting. It's full of pig shit and everything else. Alex is able to kind of break Yasmin's chain, and this allows her to get away. She escapes. She crawls underneath the, this is so sad, disgusting. She crawls underneath the cage part of the pen through pig shit, basically, and comes out the other side and tries to then escape. And Alex is telling her, get the hell out of here, go get help. That's the only smart thing to do, really, go get help. Regardless of what happens to us, at least one of us would get away and maybe be able to save another one, or at least bring, the authorities back here to stop these fucking psychos. And, so the, patriarch of the family, who is just like this huge ass Nazi. I mean, he's so Nazi, it's not funny. There's two characters in here. I mean, I guess all of them, but the old man who runs the family is just such the neo-Nazi, stereotype, And then, of course, he has a daughter named Gilberta, who is one of the Innkeepers, and she is just so Isla. I mean, she's like a modern version of the Nazi she-wolf. It's totally blonde hair, which is probably dyed, by the way. Oh, just over the top with the Nazi shit. And they go in and they cut Alex's tendons with this huge. They're like it's like a chain cutter, you know what I mean? It's not. He calls it pliers. They don't look like pliers to me. They look like something, but anyway, he cuts his tendons, and Alex screams. And of course, this is another hard scene to get through. But meanwhile, in the mine, Fareed finds the storage area for the victims. The family realizes something is amiss inside the mine, and Hans chases Fareed into a boiler. Hans is the big, fat, like 500-pound guy, right? And this is where we lose Fareed. And I don't want to give this scene up because I thought it was pretty good because you didn't know what was going to happen. And it's got like a really good gore ending to it, to the little setup here that goes down. I hated it for the reason that, Fareed was like one of my favorite characters. He's the squirrely little guy, the little guy who you wouldn't think would be getting away, but it seemed like he was going to get away. And then we have this scene But back in the pig pen, uh, well, what happens is, Yaz tries to get away, but she's picked up by Guts, who hasn't been seen in a while. But uh, he brings her back to the pig pen. Basically, it's just like a Texas Chainsaw thing. She gets in the truck and it's the wrong truck to get into. Takes. I mean, a lot of this is Texas Chainsaw, guys. A lot of it is Hills Have Eyes too. Reminds me of that a lot, except for the, you know, implementation of the Nazi thing and the far right thing. But yeah, so she ends up right back where she started from, and then they kill Alex. And the next thing we see is that they've now got Yasmin. She's going to be the wife of the commander, who is like the oldest one of this neo-Nazi leader's boys, and she's going to be his wife. Little do they know she's already pregnant. But yeah, so they like humiliate her here. They shave her hair off and everything, and they're putting her down because she's a Muslim. And there's some talk about, well, should we be messing with her because she's Muslim? Do we want to extend our bloodline through this? And it's kind of interesting that the old man is like, yeah, we can't let our family die. We have to have someone to carry on the family lineage. And this is the commander, whose name is Carl, the oldest boy. He wants him to marry her, which means, take her and rape her for the rest of her life, probably. And so then, we're shown another one of the sisters. There's three sisters. The third one is Eva, and she's the meek one. She's kind of like the little girl from Hills Have Eyes that is not really, digging what the family's up to. And she tells Yasmin that she came to be part of this family in a similar manner, and that she is obedient because her family promised her that her parents would return for her someday. It's so sad, right? And Eva also tells Yasmin that of the rejected homeless children she and Hans care for in the mine. Hans is the big fat guy again. I gotta keep throwing that in there. But eventually, they take Eva down to dinner, and this is where we get our dinner scene, our Texas Chainsaw scene here, where we get the father of the family spouting off all this philosophy that doesn't make sense to anyone who's not a fucking psycho. And we have, everyone's forced to eat, and then she is able to get a hold of a knife and take him hostage. And so she's able to get the old man. And then Hans kind of has a freak out here, the big guy. They're all kind of like in this weird hierarchy in this family. And they hate each other because of it. Like, they're placed in certain, it's more like an army than a family, right? Like, you're the commander, you're the this, and so because of that, they have different places in the family, and they kind of hate each other because of it. And Hans has a little freak out here, and Carl, turns the gun on him and is like, "I'm gonna kill you if you don't drop the gun." It gets a little weird here, but they had to come up with some way for Yasmin to be able to get away from like 5 of these people at once, right? So this is what happens. We have to have some chaos or some anarchy here that allows her to escape, because otherwise, when you're looking at this situation, you're like, "There's no escape here. She's fucked regardless of what happens." She's got a knife to this old man's throat in a room full of guns. What's your end game, But anyway, so they have this all boils over. Carl kills Hans. There's more shooting. She is able to, Hans actually shoots the old man while she's holding him, and she's able to get out and get away again, right? And so then she has several individual scenes with different members of the family where she has to survive or kill them. And I'm not going to give all those away, because this is where a lot more of the gore comes in. It's fun. There's good shots in here. I will say this: there's no rape in this. I didn't see a rape. If I missed it, it must have been like I got up to get a cup of coffee or something, and then there was a rape. But I've seen it twice, though. I saw it once, I'd say probably 8 years ago, and then again before doing this review. And yeah, it's a good movie, and I appreciate that there's a lot in this movie, and it's one of those movies that it's very easy to just say it's a shock film and just dismiss it, as not having any real content. But there's a lot in this movie, guys. There's political stuff in this movie. There's, I think they handled the question of abortion here pretty good without trying to force it either way. You can kind of see her point in the beginning about, it should be her choice to not, if she doesn't want to bring her child into this world. But then as the movie goes on, we kind of see that how this is also important that she does survive and have this child. And it makes it, it is a kind of a cheap sense of tension when you have like a pregnant woman or a child, and you're constantly, there's going to be automatic tension because you're constantly worried they're going to be hurt. It's not like a dude where the dude can get shot up. John McClane can walk through broken glass, and we're just like, oh, he's a tough son of a bitch. When you have kids or a pregnant woman or something like that, we tend to constantly be worried that something is going to happen to them. Anything, that could cause stress, especially for the pregnant woman. It may not even be something physical, but she takes an ass whooping in this, and she comes right back. She gives it back just as good as she gets it. And we get to the end part, and of course it comes down to her and the she-bitch. Yeah, and you can't wait to see this woman get killed. I mean, she's just a fucking miserable asshole. Probably one of the top miserable assholes in the female division of all time. Yeah, she's one of the tops. But she just looks gross to me. Every time I look at her in the movie, I'm like, she just looks gross, like nasty, like a Nazi. And so yeah, we get to the end here. The end's a little, I'm lukewarm about it. I could have went either way, but the way they went with it, it was kind of like a little added depression on the end of the film, which I'm not really for or against. It's just kind of, I wish you go through that much shit, you want to see somebody totally get away scot clean, right? No more issues. They don't deserve any more problems that day. I mean, fuck, you get kidnapped by a bunch of Nazis and your boyfriend and your family gets cut up. That's pretty much a wrap on that fucking day anyway. So, does it need to get worse after that, But, yeah. I'm going to give Frontiers, guys, I'm giving Frontiers 8 out of 10. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. I don't think for me, it's not there with Martyrs. If you're looking at these films, I'm not, if you're looking at these films as it's being filmed inside the French extreme movement or whatever they call it. There's several of those movies in that category, and I think, probably for me the three best are probably Martyrs, Inside, and Frontiers, which I don't think that's a big surprise for anyone. I know some people throw High Tension in there, but we're talking about High Tension's 4, almost 5 years before this. You could kind of say that maybe that kicked it off. I don't really think Irreversible goes into that extreme thing either. I know some people put it in there, but for me it's not, I don't know, it's not exactly on that level. It's more of a dramatic movie than a shock movie. But it is shocking, don't get me wrong, and Irreversible's been on this. We've had Irreversible on Hardcore Horror Reviews, so I'm not saying it's not shocking. I tend to separate the movies a little bit more by the years they were made and stuff. But, so yeah, this one came out in 2007. It's a year before Martyrs, around the same time as Inside. But I would say this. I think if it's below Inside, it's just a little bit below. I mean, I'd probably give Inside like 8.5 out of 10. Give this one 8 and give Martyrs 9 is the way I would do it. There's some other movies that I would love to talk about that if I did, it would just take up more and more time than I already have. Chiton with Vincent Cassel is a fun movie, and also Mutants from that era is another fun French movie. The Horde, there's a bunch of them. So yeah, guys, that's all we got for this time. I'm giving Frontiers a solid 8 out of 10. Now, our next movie is going to be a little bit different. It's a weird one. It's from 2009, and it's called Neighbor. And I've only seen it once, but I do remember it. And I know a lot of people haven't seen it, so that's why we're going to talk about that one next. I feel like this one was a little more known. I'll say this. If you're into extreme horror films, you've probably seen Frontiers. Neighbor, maybe not. And so we're going to do Neighbor, and then the film we're going to do after that is Dream Home. Dream Home from 2010 from Korea. Not the Daniel Craig, Rachel Weisz movie. Not that one. No, this one is a fucking hardcore slasher from Korea from 2010. And it's one of my favorite movies. So we're going to be talking about those two next. Those are our next two movies. And guys, we will talk to you the next time we got something worth talking about. Bye.